Good afternoon, Warriors. Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and the 1% Club. I'm doing one this afternoon. I couldn't get one done this morning that I thought was kind of important, relevant to you guys, so I wanted to kind of do one this afternoon. So hope you guys are on your purpose, plan, goals. Everything is going along the way it should. I appreciate, again, all the comments. I keep saying that, but it just continues to kind of amaze me, all the people that are sending messages in, and all the people that are donating, and all the people that are going ahead and kind of giving me suggestions and ideas and likes and comments and things like that. So please continue that. I feel blessed. We're almost getting close to 600 subscribers, and I'm really interested in getting the word out to as many people as we can, and it's very enjoyable when that happens. That it makes me feel like that something I'm doing is something that's going to kind of be passed on to a lot of the younger generations, and being able to kind of get back into the way men should be. So I appreciate all that. So once again, thank you guys so much for your comments. People like, and I'll use a lot of comments today, rattle names off. Kevin, thank you for the shout out. Abstract 101, thank you for the shout out. Nazir, thank again for your comments. Francisco, thank you for your comments. Storyline, I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about one of yours, so I'll keep that for a little bit later. And then King David, thank you for several comments. You're great, my friend. I know you have your own channel, so please listen to go over and view King David's channel as well. I'm sure you got a lot of great information over there as well. So two things that we're going to kind of focus on today, one of which is the idea of God and semen retention. What role does God play into semen retention? And then the second question, really kind of the idea, goes back to temptation and the role that semen retention plays in temptation. And these three terms, believe it or not, in my mind at least, are connected, very connected. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So, and it comes from Storyline, gave us a nice comment about temptation, and then as Francisco did as well. And I also want to kind of focus then on King David, talking about prayer and how important God is in his life. And kudos to you, my friend, for willing to share that out and talking about your relationship with God and how it's affecting your whole life. The idea that we're talking about here, my friends, is the fact that you're trying to become the best person you become, and that means you're trying to follow God's plan. And God's plan is something that is crucial to you becoming the best human being you can become. Now, some people don't want to believe that. Other people, they kind of laugh at it, or they don't think God is real and all these type of things. But the reality of the situation, in my mind, there's no doubt about it, is the fact that there is a God. If you didn't think there's a God, then you're thinking you are the God. There's no other two ways about it. It's black or white, very simple. You have to be God, or you have to, or else or there is a God that you are kind of worshiping and giving prayer to and all those type of things. And in my case, I used to be a God many, many years ago in my mind, and then I became saved, but I got to the point where I really believed that God is real, as I do now, even stronger than everything. So my goal was to try to become closer to God, and I had read so many different ideas about getting back to the normal way you are, getting back to your own behavior, getting back to your manly or femininity that you have. And that comes through self-control. And the Bible talks about self-control so many times that it really is the essence of what you should be doing to kind of take care of yourself. So the idea that we're talking about here is really being able to become strong in self-control. Well, how do we do that? Well, again, if you think you're God, you're going to have very limited self-control, because you don't believe that you should try to follow any rules. This is the misconception of being so liberal that you have no boundaries. The problem that I've had with that idea all these years, being liberal, is the fact that people do not take accountability. The one thing the Bible does, beyond everything, and God does, is holds you responsible. You are responsible for making good decisions and to believe in God. And if you don't do that, well, then you're going to eventually suffer the consequences of that. And I think this is important for us to realize. I mean, the most practical book in the world is the Ten Commandments. To my mind, if you follow those rules, you're going to have a very happy, successful, peaceful life. If you don't follow those rules, you're going to have a miserable, angry, and bitter life. And we see lots of people in that category, A lot of people having difficulty. A lot of it's caused by their own actions and things they've done over the years. And so as we kind of look at this, the key to a lot of things that we talk about is having that deep faith. If you have that faith, now all of a sudden, now you're ready to do the things that God wanted you to do. And part of those reasons then leads us into the idea of self-control. Obviously, having self-control makes things more worthwhile, gives you goals, gives you ideas of how to behave, and it gives you a template. It talks about semen retention. I talk about it as a discharge in the Bible, but it's kind of the same thing. We're talking about the same thing. Controlling yourself to the point where you're able to kind of control these negative behaviors. And if you control that, then you control the other types of things like, eating too much, or trying to gamble too much, or all these other things that you get into addictions because you don't have that faith that somebody else is helping you, or somebody out there is looking out for you, and you have been saved by the Lord. If you don't have that feeling, then you're going to not be as strong in any of these things that we're talking about. So as I look at the situation, and as I heard King David talk about it in his messages and storylines talking about it, we have a real connection here. And this is the connection. The connection is that as God, you are becoming stronger to God. You obviously have a less of an interest in doing the carnal types of things you need to do in our society. As the Bible says, you live in one world or the other. You live in a spiritual world, or you live in the world. The Christian people, or I should say, religious people, because a lot of people on the channel are not Christian. Religious people are the people that are not of the world. And I guess that's the best way to kind of put it. And if you are very religious, if you are believing in a God, and you don't believe you are the God, then you are going to have success. And I don't care if you're Buddhist, I don't care if you're practicing Sufism, I don't care if you're practicing Brahmacharya, I don't care if you're practicing Christianity. All those type of things kind of go back and revolve around the same principle. The same principle is the fact that you are somebody who is of a different world. And it sounds crazy. It sounds like, well, the Vigor Warrior is kind of, talking crazy nonsense here. But what I mean by that is that you basically are not living in the world. You're not living because of money. You're not living because you want high status. You're not living because you want a lot of girls or a lot of guys. You're not living for a fancy car. You're not living for these things. You're living in a different world. And I think that's the key that we're talking about, because it is a sad life if you sit there and you're living more for the world. You're living the competition to get the most toys, the more objects, the most things in your life. All that is a useless struggle, because you can't take any of that stuff with you when you pass away. When you're dead, you're dead. You can't take it with you. At least your body form is dead. Then you figure out that you really are spiritual. You just haven't have a body that covers that spirituality and is enclosed within that. But the idea then is, when you're looking at things, you're looking at you being an instrument of God. And if you're an instrument of God, God can use you in different ways. And He can use you to become a strong person in the Lord. And as you become a strong person in the Lord, you become stronger and stronger in your conviction. And that's why there's a high connection between semen retention and believing in God and the Lord. Because you don't need those carnal things anymore. You don't need to go ahead and focus on women or having sex all the time unless you really want to have children. You don't need to do that. The more you're into God, the less you're going to be into that, because that's just kind of the opposite of what you're dealing with. You're not dealing with those things. That's why they say in the Bible, we're dealing with principalities and spirits and evil forces. We're not dealing with actual people. People are just the face head you see. If you really knew what behind those people are, you might be shocked. But the thing that we're dealing with really is the idea that as you go through life, you have to kind of make a decision of who you're standing for. If you're standing with the Lord, then you're not going to need a lot of this other stuff. You're not going to need a lot of these things that we're talking about that the people of the world need. Money, you don't need it. And this is why it's very hard for a rich person to go to heaven, because what ends up happening is that, they can't give away all their riches. They've lived for those riches, and now they're owned by those riches. They call these things idols, and they live by those things. And so they live in the world, and part of pornography, part of imaging, part of having one-night stands and sex all the time is the idea that you're basically looking at, carnal activities. Ideas that really are not very based in spirit. They're based in flesh and bones and things like that. And so the society plays on those, and I think the evil one has a big part in all of that, creating all this. It's almost like that eating the apple. It's all very deceptive. Everything that we see is very deceptive. We have to kind of go back to the Bible and actually look at the truth of the situation. And if we do that, we'll figure out really what's going on. Now, how does this then go into temptation? Well, pretty simply, as we had ideas from storyline, and we had ideas from Nazar. A lot of people talked about this. The thought pattern is that if you have a strong belief in God, in your God, you're not going to fall victim of temptation, because you're going to flee from temptation because you realize it's wrong. You realize the 10 Commandments, for instance, talks about you should not commit adultery. Just thinking about it, going to monk mode and getting away from monk mode. Using monk mode is good. Getting away from monk mode, going to temptation, right? Those things go away from the whole idea of what you're trying to accomplish. And so that's why we talk about temptation. Temptation really is the evil one trying to push you away from God. And the more you do that, the more away from God you are. The people who get involved in pornography, the people get in images, one-night stands all the time, they're getting, in my opinion, further and further away from God. And then eventually God will come to them and say, do you believe in me? And they're so hard, and I talk about this, they use the word with talking about Pharaoh. He was just, I can't remember what the word is, but he just didn't believe. He wouldn't believe. He was so hard-headed, he didn't believe. And the bottom line then is that God basically ended up destroying all these people. We saw that in Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, it only took, half an hour, 45 minutes for that. Babylon took 1 hour, all right? You see all these other dynasties slowly evaporate. And a lot of that goes back to the idea that they could not deal with temptation because they had no belief in God. And so you fall victim to a lot of different things if you don't have that sort of faith. So there's a strong connection between God, temptation, and semen retention. If you're able to control yourself, you're going to be able to spend your time focusing on the Lord. And the Lord is going to be your kind of savior moving in a direction. Whenever you feel like getting temptation, you're going to think about that and say no. There's lots of times that I've been flirted with, several times actually today. And I just basically know that the answer is always going to be no. And that's something you have to kind of keep in mind as you focus on trying to become that strong person, be closer to your God as you go along. So I think that in summary, when we talk about this, it's really important to realize that as you're focusing on being the best person you can become, you're going to kind of look at saying, okay, how do I get closer to my God? I get closer to my God by focusing on those type of behaviors that are going to be very within line of God's purpose. So do not commit adultery. Do not have more than one God. No, do not have idols, right? Do not kill. Do not honor your mother and father. All these type of things become important. And we all, we all sin at times. We have to make sure we're on top of that and that we're actually trying to adjust and stay away from those type of things. Because God knows that. God knows what you're thinking. God understands that. And there's going to be a reckoning at some point for all of us. And we have to make sure that we have that reckoning, that we're going to be on the good side and not the bad side. Because I think certainly I feel there's a lot more pain coming if you don't really, if you're not on with God and you're against God. Even though people in our society nowadays, a lot of people don't believe in God. And it just, it's leading to one of those Sodom and Gomorrah or the Babylon types of things that we see. So again, I'm going to shout out to King David's storyline, Francisco. A lot of people made comments for both of these type of things, and I want to shout out to them because there is a strong connection between the things we're talking about. If you have strong faith, if you have strong ability to believe in God, if you're able to say, okay, I'm happy with my relationship with God, and you really believe you're going to follow that, you're not going to go ahead and want to, spend time in temptation, spend time looking at magazines, spend time looking at books, because that's not really accomplishing God's purpose for you. And it's actually the opposite purpose that He wants for you. So this is really, I think, a good connection, and I like kind of bringing this all kind of together. And like I said, the most important thing is that faith you have with your Lord. And if you have that strong faith, then you're not going to want to have temptation. You're not going to want to look at those books. You're not going to want to go ahead and have that one night stand, cheat on your wife, or cheat on your girlfriend, or just have one night stands in general. You're not going to want to do that because you have a purpose. And on top of that, if God gives you that type of idea and purpose, you're also then going to have the idea that I'm going to have goals, I want to achieve things, and I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, this is my purpose. I have no time to waste on women. And that's something you got to really think about. And I, as I said, I'm 61, so I've been through all those phases, and I understand how that is and how you feel about it. And it seems very important, especially if you're in your 20s. It seems very, very important. But as time goes on, you'll recognize that those type of things are not as important as they seem. Having a family, having kids, I think is very important, of course. But having multiple partners, having all these other things, in my mind, are not as important. And I think that's something to kind of give some thought to as you go through. So again, shout out to King David, shout out to the Storyline Productions, shout out to a lot of great comments from helpful people like Kevin, and a lot of people making some good comments. I appreciate that. And so until next time, my friends, have a great day, rest of your day. Keep on your battle plan, keep on your ideas, keep on trying to make the world a better place, and more than anything else, become that warrior that you want to become. Become that masculine warrior, that strong male, and never, never give up, and fight to the end with everything you do. God bless each one of you guys, my friends. Battle on and keep battling.